Lesson number 58 and second lesson of the series. We are learning JavaScript and we are learning JavaScript by examples. In this series we are creating this wonderful application which is a quiz, and this is the final version of the quiz. And if I make it bigger, that is how it is. It will show you a number of random images of tigers, and then there are some options down below. When you click on a correct answer, it will tell you the answer is right or wrong, and then you will be presented with a different set of images with a different number of images. And if I select a wrong answer, it will tell you the answer is wrong. So this is what we have done so far in this lesson, and this is the code that we have written so far. In this lesson we have to apply CSS, means we have to stylize it. As you can see that the image of the tiger is too big, the writing is too small, and the options are also too small, and they are on the left hand side. So we want to format this. In other words, we want to apply CSS styling. So I'll change the size of my browser, and this is the code that we have written so far. Now before I start applying the styling, you'll notice that when I try to click on the radio button, so I can select more than one options, which is incorrect. A user should only be able to click on one radio button, and then the script should tell it whether the answer is right or wrong. So this can be easily fixed by adding all these radio buttons in a single group. So this is the variable that is creating all these elements, or holding all these elements, the input elements. So we can say vinput.set attribute, and if we use the name attribute and give all of them exactly the same name, they will become part of one group. So I will say group of radio buttons. So if I now save it and if I refresh it, you will notice that I can only select one option, and when I click on the other radio button, the previously selected radio button gets deselected. The only thing that remains now is to fix the formatting of the page to make it look beautiful and presentable to the user. So we have to go to our head area, and I will create a style tag, an opening style tag and a closing style tag, and then within this style tag we can write our CSS. So first thing first, I want to target the whole body, and I will say body and an opening curly bracket and a closing curly bracket, and I will say width 80%. So if I now save it, nothing should happen, but visible width of the page is now 80% of whatever the width of the screen is. Doesn't matter if it is a mobile phone or a tablet or a desktop computer. So we want to make everything visible in the center, and if you remember, we will have to use margin auto, and I will say text align center. Now these two CSS properties will center the elements within the body. So if I now save it and now refresh this, you can see that the text is in the center of the web browser. However, the image is still very big and the size of the text is also very small. So we can say font size maybe 22 pixels. If I save it and refresh it, you can see that the size of the font has become bigger. I also want to change the font family to Verala Round. This is the font that I like for this script, and we have a different font. The next thing that I want to do is to change the size of the image to fit onto this page, and I want these things to be visible, these input options to be visible to the user in one go, rather than them trying to scroll up and down. So I will target the image element, this element, and the way to do is to write img, which is the image element, an opening curly bracket and a closing curly bracket, and width, and this time I want to use 45 VW, 45% of the view width. I want the image to be resized to 45% of the width of the viewing screen. So if I save it and refresh it, the image is now 45% of the width, 45% in size of the width of the screen. And if I decrease the size of the screen, you can see the size of the image is getting smaller, and if I increase the size of the screen, you can see the size of the screen is getting bigger. However, when I decrease the size to maybe of a mobile phone, you can see that the image is too small. So we can use minimum width, maybe 350 pixels. Okay, so on the smaller screens the width would be 350 pixels fixed, but when the browser gets bigger or the bigger screen is being used, the width will be 45% of the screen. Minimum size is 350 pixels. It's getting smaller, but it does not get any smaller than 350 pixels. But when you use a bigger device, the width of the image changes to 45% of the width of the browser. Now I also want to change the size of these input elements, the radio buttons. So I will target input elements and I will say width 35 pixels and height 35 pixels as well. Because these are radio buttons, we have to use the same width and height. If I now save it and refresh it, you can see that the size of the radio buttons has increased. However, they are not aligned. So we can use another CSS property, which is transform, and then I will say translate y. I want to translate the position of the input elements in y direction to maybe 7 pixels. 7 pixels. So if I now save it and refresh it, you can see that the input elements are aligned, well aligned, and you can probably change it, increase maybe 1 or 2 pixels more, but I think it looks perfectly fine to me. Maybe 8 pixels. Let's see what happens. So if I now save it and refresh it, the input elements are much more beautiful, and we are almost there. All we have to do is to add some JavaScript to provide a response in terms of tick or cross or say right or wrong. So, and that we will do in the next lesson.